Yeah, thank you for tuning in. So we've got Arden Hart and Matt Dillahunty. We've got John calling in from Texas. And it sounds to me like he's maybe been listening to Jordan Peterson because he's been arguing that his God is kind of metaphorical. But then on the other hand, one moment he's saying it's a metaphorical God, the next moment he's saying that it can actually do things. So it seems to me like it's an agent. Matt's getting frustrated, so let's pick it up and see where it goes.
The words that, I'm going to mute you for a second. The words that just came out of your mouth were, I didn't say that he was, well, he's also a metaphorical abstraction.
Yeah.
I literally just said, it can't be both this and this. Settle that conflict. And then you pretended that you didn't say it and immediately corrected to say that you did say it. You're literally saying that there is a God that is an actual thinking agent that does stuff, and that he's also a metaphorical abstraction. That makes no sense. Please reconcile it or stop talking to me.
Okay. So like I've watched a movie before and seen a representation of my life in that film. That film has like my pattern in it, but it's a metaphorical abstraction.
Yeah.
That's how I reconcile that question.
That's absolute nonsense. Is there a documentary of your life?
Okay.
Is there a documentary of your life?
I mean, honestly,
is there
every film
a
that I
fucking
watch
documentary of your life? Why is it, John, that I can ask a simple yes or no question and you stumble over it? Is there an actual documentary of John's life?
I actually have a documentary that I made myself on my YouTube channel that I made in like high school called John's Documentary. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when I see a film that, like, you obviously relate to characters when you see a movie, right? Why do you think you relate to characters when you see a movie?
Some people,
because they manifest similar patterns that you understand.
Yes, but that doesn't make them equal to you. That's the fucking point. If I find a character in a film, shut up. If I find a character in a film that I relate to, that is me imbuing that with aspects of me and recognizing some aspects of me, but it is not equal to me. I am not the character in that film.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. But like,
you are saying that God is both the God and the character that you see in the patterns, but that is equating two things that are not equivalent. You are equating the map, a sloppy map, with the place. You have to be distinct about what you're actually talking about.
Well, if the map applies to everyone's life, it might be more like, how is that not like a truer like version of reality than the specific messier version?
A truer, so you suggest, no. You just suggested that the map is a truer version of reality than the place that it describes. Are you kidding me?
No. That's not really what I'm saying.
Okay, if I can just stop. For those of you who've listened to Jordan Peterson, don't you agree that this is what we've heard from Peterson, and I think I can't remember, one or two others who have said that the metaphorical is more powerful than the real. Now, it's a John Crossan, yeah. He's a Christian who believes that the resurrection is merely metaphorical, but that it's more powerful because of that. And I think that I've heard Peterson arguing something similar, that the metaphor is actually more powerful than reality. Maybe that's what he means.
I'm saying that, like, if everyone watched a documentary of my life, they'd be like, okay, that little thing he does, I do that. That's like very similar. But if you watch like a movie like Blade Runner or something like that with these really like deep like patterns that everyone kind of relates to, like, that's a much more true pattern in a way, a much more deep pattern, like a much more
I think what he's kind of saying is that, obviously, if you read a novel that's got no metaphor in it, good metaphors. A good metaphor can actually be more powerful at expressing something than literal language. I think that's probably what he's getting at, but he's somehow, conflating that literary device with his, spiritual interpretations and aspirations.
Occurring pattern.
No,
Why?
John, you don't get to say that
Why?
an approximate. Shut up and listen, and I'll tell you why, dumbass. You don't get to say that an approximation of X is more accurate than X, because X is, by the law of identity, perfectly X, and an approximation of X is not. This is the sort of sloppy thinking that you get from Jordan Peterson and others. You are equating things because you find meaning in it or value in it, or you see something that, oh, it looks like a pattern. You don't mesh with any version of Christianity that is an identifiable doctrine. That's a denomination. That's fine. You can make up your own, or somebody else can. But when you say that you believe that you believe the Bible is true, but God is an abstraction, you don't know the fucking Bible. That's just a fact. You don't know Christian doctrine. You don't know the foundations of this. You don't know the history of this. Instead, you are a cafeteria modern Christian who's trying to make sense of the world, which is fine, and saying, wonder if God could be like this. Maybe God's like this. What method do you have, John? John, what method do you have to identify the characteristics of God?
If it's beautiful and true. Like if I watch a story and I think that, wow, like I've experienced that, like I'm receiving God's wisdom in the universe. And I do that not just with watching a movie. I do that with spending time in nature and like just like letting, kind of turning off my mind and letting insights flow.
Yeah, well, that's not a method though, is it? Matt asked for a method.
What is the justification for concluding that because you find something beautiful and because you find something true, that means you have in fact found something that is God?
That's a good question.
Yeah, that was the question I asked first. You avoided.
Wait, sorry. Can you say that again?
That was the question I asked first that you avoided. When I say, what methodology do you have for determining that you've discovered something about God, and you say, if it's beautiful and true, it's God, you haven't told me anything. You might as well have said, if it's pink and purple and veiny, it's God.
Oh, okay. Well, I think that it's something that I can rely on to move through death, essentially.
No, sir. Yeah. What about recognize what? Stop, listen.
Did you hear what he just said? If it's something he can rely on to move through death. Well, I suppose this comes back to why we hear that so many people believe, because they're afraid of dying. And he wants to survive. He said to move through death. Whether he means to get through the experience of death to actual death, or whether he means through death into an afterlife, I'm not really too sure.
The fact that you find something beautiful, or you are convinced that something is true, how does that directly tie to evidence for a God?
Because everything that's view and truthful has a single unity, and that single unity, I mean that's I guess that'd be it. Yeah.
No, I asked how. Wow, I'm going to try this one last time.
Well, I don't know. I think that Matt should probably be asking how it is that everything that's beautiful and true has a single unity. What does that mean? And prove it.
I asked, what is it about finding something that you find beautiful and you are convinced is true? How does that demonstrate evidence for God?
I guess I'm confused. Like, what kind of evidence are you looking for?
Jesus,
like, for me,
fucking
that
Christ,
is the
Jonathan, stop talking. Listen, I'm going to make this as simple as I possibly.
We seem to hear this every third call when a theist calls in. After 10, 15 minutes, getting absolutely nowhere. It's in the end, what kind of evidence are you looking for?
It's just John. Stop. It's just no Jonathan.
Sorry, John. Shut up and listen.
Oh, You're straw manning him, Matt. You didn't use his proper name. You called him Jonathan when his name's John, or you called him John when his name's Jonathan.
Listen, I'm going to make this as simple as possible. And if you still don't get it, I have nothing that I can help for you. The reason I called you Jonathan is because you kept mentioning Jonathan Peugeot. All right.
Fine.
If you're going to say, I have found evidence for X, anything, you have to show a line that connects the existence of evidence with it being evidence for a proposition. So if you're going to say Arden is a mass murderer, you have to have physical evidence that shows that
Matt does use some really strange examples.
Arden has actually killed a bunch of people. And so when I say, what evidence do you have? What methodology do you have that demonstrates that Arden is a mass murderer? And you say, well, she's smart and hot. And then I say, what does something being smart and hot have to do with it being a mass murderer? That shouldn't confuse anybody. The point is, there's nothing that you or anybody else has identified about being smart and or hot that makes someone a mass murderer. So what is it about something being beautiful or true that you claim confirms the existence of a God, is necessarily tied to a God? Are you suggesting that it is impossible to find something beautiful or true and for that to not be evidence for God?
I think that everything beautiful and true has a relationship to God. And
I know you think that. The question you dolt is, why do you think that everything that is beautiful and true demonstrates God? That's the question. I don't know how many fucking ways I can explain this to you.
Wait a minute. Matt used a new word, dolt, D-O-L-T. Excuse me, just make a note of that one.
Animals are spending a lot of time building something beautiful. And even us, because we spend a lot of time doing that. I think that what they're doing is not just the only reason I think that makes sense that they're doing that. Yeah. Yes.
I swear I will drop you like a hot rock if you go off on a divergent path again. I don't give a shit.
Now, you know something? I've said before that recently, I've compared Christians and theists to, unfavorably, I have compared them to alien abductees. Now, you'll have to admit that when an alien abductee gives us the story, at least it's fairly consistent. At least it's got some details in it. It's even got some kind of weird plausibility about it because it's not supernatural. But what we don't get with alien abductees is dancing around. They seem to remember their stories and, repeat them quite well. But with Christians and theists, they're dancing around all the time. They're diving and dodging, shuffling here, shuffling one way, shuffling another. And they can never really seem to consistently answer any questions. And the answers they give to questions are completely unsatisfactory. They don't seem to listen to the question. They seem to hear another question and answer that one.
What you think about what animals are doing. I'm asking the very specific question. If someone recognizes something as beautiful, is that, and how is that evidence for God, and what makes it evidence for God? I know that you think beauty is necessarily tied to God. What justification, what arguments supported by evidence, what heuristic model, what theory can you present that ties X is beautiful to therefore X is evidence for God?
Got you. Well, I think that my mind is structured by the patterns of the universe from the ground up.
Goodbye.
And I think that when something
Goodbye.
manifests as something beautiful, it's
goodbye,
just the way
John.
it is. It's not my choice.
That's just the way it is. You know how else it is? Goodbye.
Okay, right. Just one more thing I'd like to say about that. So when somebody is saying that beauty is evidence of God, I suppose my question would be, define beauty. If you're going to use a variable or piece of evidence for something, then you should be able to define what that something is. And I think that beauty is a label that we put on something that we find subjectively pleasing and attractive. I can't think of any other adjectives there. But I think it's too subjective a term to use in any kind of, shall we say, logical syllogism to prove the truth of a proposition. I don't know. What do you think of that? I would never, I don't really think, I think that maybe it would be better, rather than say, what is it about beauty that leads you, which is evidence for the existence of God, it might be better to start with, well, what is beauty? And if you're going to use something as evidence for God, shouldn't it be something that we could all agree is beauty? And it might not be, because obviously beauty is so subjective. That's all for now. I hope you enjoyed that call. I'll put a link in below so you can go and watch it without my commentary if that's what you want. Bye for now.